Joe, I'm totally curious to see when you get your first like big client, like a pro athlete. What led up to that? Because there's so many people in business that are always trying to get that first client or get that first ideal client, let's say. What led up to you getting that first client where you're like, all right, now we've got some momentum. Now we're heading in the right direction. Kind of walk me through what that progression of your career looked like early on.
Yeah, I mean, and in short, I think, it was a culmination of things. Obviously educating myself first and really trying to decide what I wanted to do and being specific in what I wanted to do. I had my master's in exercise physiology, and then from there, I just kind of started to fine tune my skill set, and that really has never stopped, and I think it will never stop. And as exercise science, physiology, the understanding of the human body is constantly changing, so going into this whole journey with that ideology that I can never stop learning was something that I always held deep to myself. And since then, I think it's helped me create relationships from going to seminars or going to courses or doing online courses and meeting people in the industry. And once the education part was out of the way, it was just kind of sacrificing my time. And you got to kind of start off in the beginning with you know I was training clients and high level athletes for free for a little bit, and I think that's a little sacrifice that you have to do in the beginning. And then once people start to trust in your skill set and others start to view and see you with high level people, I think it starts to raise eyebrows and like, oh, who is this person? And then you look into them, and then it just organically grew from there. And it was just me kind of just being myself and working with these high level athletes, and it just slowly started to build and build and build. And luckily, I am where I am today. And yeah, the journey still continues because I'm constantly trying to better myself, just to really better the athletes that I'm around on a daily basis, and continuing to create great relationships and just learn. Because I mean, I feel as if, and I always say this, is the more I learn, the less I know. So I'm constantly trying to pursue greater kind of, I guess, educational journeys, if you want to call it that, but just bettering myself so I can better the people around me.
I love it. Guys, we're with Joe Cancellieri. He's based out of Orange County, California, correct?
Yep.
And he is a sports performance specialist. And I've been following you for years on Instagram. And then when we created the podcast, I all of a sudden bumped into your stuff and said, how have I not introduced you to the podcast yet? So kind of want to go back to what you just said, which I think
Yeah.
is super powerful. I think that a lot of us, when it comes to business, and I just figured we'd start off on the business side because we have a
Of
lot of
course.
people that are looking to like start their own businesses in the niche that you're in.
Yep.
And I think what's interesting is that people overthink it. And I think that
Yep.
it's just a matter of getting started. And people tend to make too much of a place too much of a focus on the dollar amount and the money they need to make. And it's like, well, it, like you said, organically will grow if you just start by saying, how can I help someone with a specific problem, solve that problem? That's it. Like that's how
Yep.
you start a business. I mean,
Yep.
that's all I did. And you get in front of the right people, which,
Yep.
I did that with a AJ. Actually, I'm wearing one of those shirts now. An AJ Canzaro Motocross Academy, got my two clients. I did charge them 67 bucks a month. And I was talking to them every day. It was a great deal. But I love
Yep.
how you didn't charge anyone at the beginning and just started. Um, what do you think is the biggest mistake that people make, even just with the way that they think about business?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people think they're just going to start making money right off the bat, and that never happens. I mean, and also too, you have this grand plan, and really, kind of what I've experienced is nothing ever really goes to plan, and you have to dynamically be able to adjust to what's thrown at you, and that's kind of life in itself anyways. So um yeah, I mean, I think a big thing is passion, obviously. And I think if you kind of have a deep passion for what you do, you never feel like you work a day in your life. And you go to work every day motivated, excited to wake up, and that just plays a huge role in a lot of different things: your self-image, your self-efficacy, and just kind of that grit and perseverance that you have as a person can just help you grow. And I think that's something that I have. And I'm grateful to be in the position that I'm in, and I just kind of just maintain that, and I try to push every day. So I think if you put yourself out there and, like you said, surround yourself with the right people and take risk, they pay off, and they might not pay off right away. And kind of just like how it is for athletes, they're working for years and years and years, and they might not see an immediate result, but trust the process kind of mentality, I guess you can say.
Yeah, for sure. And I love how you said the analogy that you used about, wanting to have a goal, but sometimes it just never, not sometimes it does. I agree. Almost
Yeah,
seem to never work out the way that you think, and it's almost
yeah,
like Christopher Columbus was probably got into it in one of his boats and was like, hey, let's head that way. And, let's see what happens. But the key thing is he had belief, he had conviction, he had a means and somewhat of a plan as to how he's going to get there, but he ultimately probably didn't quite know where he was going to end up.
yeah,
And so I think it's really interesting. And you start to realize that targets and goals are two completely different things. And I think goals tend to be black or white. If I say I'm going to lose 20 pounds by August 1st and I lose 19, then I failed. It's like, okay,
yeah,
but well, you lost 19 pounds and you developed a process and a habit that if you continue for another month will get you to the result. But I think a lot of us have this black and white thinking, this all or nothing. And I like how you use, you think about targets and aiming for things and realizing that the function of time is not always something we can control. Love how you have done that. So, kind of bring me through. You've got a wide variety of clients that you've worked with. Um, what makes them come to you? I think it's interesting that I've asked so many people what makes you unique. Why are people drawn to you? And I think that of all the people to ask that to, I think if I ask that to you, you're gonna have a damn good answer. So I would love to hear. I would love to hear what makes you unique and different. What draws people to you, in your opinion?
I think it's just the versatility that I have and the understanding of an individual, and how I just think that there's not one way to solve an issue or to get better. And I'm extremely open minded. And if I don't know something, I'll admit it, or I'll reach out for help to another professional and obviously the same genre of what I'm doing. And I'm really just constantly pushing myself, just for understanding the human body as much as I can. And I think my athletes see that. And I'm just myself, and I truly care about each and every one of these athletes that I work with, and I think they can sense that. And I tell them all the time, if you want to come in here at 12 at night or 1 in the morning, I'm here for you. So I think it's just the relationships I create with some of these athletes, and I think that goes a long way. And also, obviously, my background, and again, how I'm constantly just trying to learn more and more about the human body. And yeah, I kind of just use all these different skills and techniques to make someone the best version of themselves. And I think that's the key, is understanding what they need from a physical, a mental perspective, and just working with them and showing them that I'll be there for them, and showing them to trust in what we're doing. And that comes with time. And when I first get an athlete, I think it's like you would think, is it's gaining their trust. And I obviously didn't have that, starting off, and it was just really just putting in the work and showing them that I'm here every day to show up. Because I have athletes that come every day. I have athletes that are 2 days a week. I have athletes that are maybe just 1 day a week, just depending on where they live in their schedule. So um, I think, to summarize that, it's just a culmination of my skill set, my dedication to them, and over the years, all those things have made me a better professional. As I'm working with different athletes in different sports, it's opened my mind to kind of say, well, okay, I have an MLB player doing, this specific movement, but you know what? Surfing's rotational as well. So maybe the surfers would benefit from this exercise that was not a traditional movement in their training regimen, I guess you would say. So over the years, just working with so many different people and meeting so many different people, I've broadened myself in more ways than I can ever imagine.
I love that. Yeah, and it's interesting. I didn't even realize that it's true when you have all these different athletes. not only are you there to serve them, but then there's a relationship. So there's an interaction. So you're getting feedback. You're maybe learning some things from them. They might say, "Hey, I've got this tool that I use. What do you think of it?" You're like, "Oh, I never even knew it
Absolutely.
existed." And
Absolutely.
then now all of a sudden you've got another tool in your toolbox to give another athlete, and they've probably done something similar for you as well. So I like that you have that variety. Where what athletes? This is this one might get you in trouble. So you give a political answer. Which athletes tend to be the ones where overall you think from, and it's whatever you define an overall athlete, because there's
Okay.
always the question, what's the most physically demanding sport, right? It used to be
Yeah.
soccer, then people say MMA. Everyone's got their
Yeah.
own opinion, so I think you're free to speak on that one. But
Yeah.
which sport do you think is the most demanding, and which athletes do you think have to be at the peak performance in order to get the results they're looking for, where there's no leeway, there's no exceptions, like you have to be perfect, as close to
Yeah.
perfect as possible?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough question, but I guess there's a lot of layers in that question because there are sports where your literal life is on the line, right? So you got MotoGP, Supercross, motocross, um, any type of road racing where there's high speeds, you're jumping in the air, and that's a physically demanding sport. So if I were to look at that that way, I'd be like, wow, that's pretty heavy in terms of you could die. So but then there's skill set sports, right? Like all those sports have a specific skill set, and you have to take that in consideration as well. And then you have maybe less physically demanding sports, but the skill sets are extremely high, like baseball. And I work with a lot of MLB players, and I think that sport's overlooked because maybe the general person who's gone to MLB game is like, this is boring. This guy's been sitting in the outfield for 3 innings and hasn't moved. But the actual skill set of hitting a baseball, and if you look at the numbers behind that, you know, if you're batting 300, you're amazing. And that's a 3 out of 10. So you're failing 70% of the time, and you're the best in the world. So if you look at it from that, I personally believe that baseball is the hardest skill sport. Hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sport, and all you got to do is look at the numbers. If you're if you're actually hitting the ball 30% of the time, you're amazing. So that is another way of looking at it too. So there's all these different kind of layers within each sport, and if you ask each athlete, they're going to tell you that their sport's the hardest. So because they're putting their heart and soul into it. So you know, football super physically demanding. There's only 17 games in the season, so baseball's 162. MotoGP, I think, is 20 to 21 races. So there's so many layers, and I think each sport has its own difficulties physically and mentally. And it's very interesting because one of the cool things that happens with the clients that I work with is they interact with one another. And I think it's, one guy's coming in and the other person's finishing their session. And then there's some overlaying sessions as well. And they get to kind of chat it up. And I think it's kind of cool to listen to their conversations because they're so interested in one another's sports. And, you know, they're like, oh man, I don't know how you can do that. And the other one's saying the same thing back. So they all have such a, I guess, respect for one another's sports. And I do as well because when you're telling me this is extremely hard, I believe you. Like, and then the same goes for everyone else. So it's a hard sport. It's a hard question. Sorry, and I don't know if I can answer it and say that there's one sport that is at the top of that list.
Well, I love how you answered it, because really, me as a mental performance coach, where my mind goes with what you said about the 30%
Yeah.
success rate actually being amazing, is a lot of us don't talk about failure. It's like a subject, it's like talking about your ex, it's like, oh, let's not bring her up, it's like, well, she was kind of cute and I kind of think you screwed up, so let's bring it up. No, but we can learn from we can learn from failure. And it's just interesting that I think as athletes, you're so driven to succeed. But
Hmm.
what I found, and it's somewhat cliche, but like I just find, like, when people make mistakes, the athletes I work with, I'm communicating with every single day, all day.
Yeah.
When they make a mistake, every single time there's an opportunity to learn because we find a weakness. Like this is
100%.
a, or or what I like to call an opportunity, even though I just call it a weakness. I usually call it an opportunity, but it really is, because
Absolutely.
if you're winning, what'd you learn? You got confirmation on the things that you've done to prepare, which is good.
Hmm.
You got a nice bonus check, you secured your future maybe a little bit more. But in
Yep.
reality, I know myself, when I make mistakes, that's when I tend to learn the most. So I like that you highlighted that, because I just think that failure is something that we don't quite have a great relationship with. What I'm
Yeah.
curious about when it comes to failure is, when I work out, I always like to go to failure. I have a belief, and I want to see if this is true or not. My guess is it's not, because I just made up the belief. I have no validation, no credit, nothing to credit towards this. But I always felt like when I go to the gym, that
Hmm.
if I'm the one that gets to the point where I'm failing, where I mentally haven't given up, but my muscle instead says, I'm actually done with you, and then the weight starts to go down, that's
Yep.
my end point. How
Yep.
do you so one, is there any truth to that? Am I overtraining? Is there something wrong with that? And then how do you know what the end point of just a training session is? Because I just see that everyone in the gym is not, in my opinion, pushing to failure. Is there any truth to pushing to failure, or through it, or is that not, am I doing more harm than good?
No, you're actually correct on that. And, I think that, again, there's a couple of different layers to that question too, depending on if you're an athlete, if you're a general fitness enthusiast, maybe someone that's just going in there for a 30-minute workout just to move. But in terms of the physiology, failure and going to failure is one of the best ways to create a hypertrophy, strength, or power change. And um, it's funny that you mentioned this. I was literally just reading a study like yesterday or 2 days ago that spoke about this. And it was talking specifically about, no matter how much weight you use, as long as you're going to failure, the muscles are going to generate and make that change on a physiological perspective. So you can be working at 50% of the weight that you're usually working with, but as long as you go to failure, you're going to create that physiological change. Now, depending on what type of, I guess, training you're in, if you're looking for hypertrophy, you're looking for strength or power, those reps and weight are obviously going to be a little different. But failure is one of, I always train to failure too. I like just getting just being able to get that last rep, and maybe even trying to go again, and just literally failing, like you said, like mentally wanting to do it, but I physically can't. But again, let's say and again, it will also depend on, maybe you're in the middle of the season, like you're not trying to train that way because of the soreness and fatigue that it will cause. So again, I think it depends on, I guess you would say, the phase of training you're in. But if you're not in like a competitive stage, if you're in the off season, then 100%, yeah, I love training to failure, and I strongly believe in it.
Yeah, and it just feels like you tested yourself, and I don't know, I think when you do hard things, less hard things feel, or most things just feel easier, I mean,
Absolutely.
and so, even just going up in a higher weight, I find myself being much stronger than I thought I was.
Hmm.
And yeah, so what's interesting to me is also the fact that you've got people that you're training that are possibly competing. Let's say that there's a training session on, just for an example, on a Wednesday with you,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then they're competing on Saturday, or maybe
Yep.
even a Friday. Maybe it's a 2-day window. How do
Yep.
you balance something like what we just talked about, where it's like, hey, I want to grow, I'm going to get stronger, or whatever it is, but I want to push to failure, knowing that there's going to be some soreness and there's going to be some recovery, because I
Yep.
want to get an ultimate result. But at the same time, I'm competing for
Hmm.
X amount of hours on a Saturday or Friday.
Yep.
How do you manage the balance between that?
No, that's a great question. And I think, again, it comes down to the phases that you're in, right? So that type of failure, hard training, is something you want to make the focus of the off season. Especially as athletes are possibly racing Saturday to Saturday, using Supercross and motocross, for example. Off season, it's definitely going to be a little bit more of that grind, pushing through. Even though you're riding during that time, you're still trying to get a lot out of riding and the gym. So, like you pointed out, there's a balance to that. So, I think like that pushing to the end, that failure is definitely going to be more of an off season focus. And then once you're in the season, it's all about managing and balancing your workload. You can have days like that, but for example, maybe that would be on a Tuesday to give you that time to recover. Because as you know, there's some exercises that you may be sore for 3 to 4 days, and you definitely don't want to feel that way going into a competition. And that's where recovery comes into play. So obviously, there's a lot of different forms of recovery: active recovery, rolling out, trigger point therapy, sauna, ice baths, and you can use all those, and everybody's response to that is different. So finding the body's best response for yourself, and using those techniques to help you feel, I guess you would say, as refreshed as possible. And then using all the technologies that are out there nowadays. You have, all these heart rate monitors, sleep monitors. So you're just managing someone's just body and looking at all these different, I guess, data points and seeing what state they're in and making a decision on a daily basis to say, okay, maybe today we're going to take it a little easy. Your resting heart rate's a little high, your HRV is a little low. So using all those things, and that's the great thing as sports science has progressed over the years. It's definitely giving more data points to look at, but you can get carried away with it and start looking at a bunch of different things. And I'm a firm believer in keeping things pretty simple. But yeah, I think just managing someone's workload during the week is obviously extremely important. And back to the individuality, everyone kind of responds different to exercise. Maybe you're just more prone to being a cardio guy, or maybe strength training really, really affects your fatigue levels for the 2 or 3 days prior. So again, understanding your body with your coach and trying to come up with strategies to make you as fresh as possible, I think is obviously the best way to go after something like that.
Yeah, and so when it comes to like with these athletes, I think what's interesting is that people like familiarity, they like comfort, they like
Yeah.
certainty. So I even catch myself going to the gym and wanting to head towards the same machines.
Yeah.
And even if there's 4 flat benches, I have a tendency to want the ones that are on one side more than the other. It's like that's how much the consistency is. I park in
Yep.
the same spot, and you start to
Yep.
realize that this is
Yep.
how we are, but we also know that if we do the same thing, we get the same result. And so
True.
how do you balance that? Because you don't want an athlete that likes your program to come in and all of a sudden you're like, hey, guess what, we're going surfing and then we're doing push-ups and run on the beach. It's like, whoa, one, I have a fear of water, almost drowned twice. What's going on? This is not familiar. Does not sound cool. Like, what the hell are you doing to me, Joe? Like, I came here because we do the battle ropes. Like, why aren't we doing the battle ropes? How do you
Yeah.
manage that? Because you got to keep things interesting too, right?
Absolutely. And periodization is the word that came to mind there. And like you just said, if you do something for too long, your body just becomes immune to it, right? And you want to stress and kind of shock the body sometimes. And it's funny that you say that, because athletes are always trying to bargain with me of things that they want and would not want to do. And I know it's because they're good at it, right? And it's like, oh, why don't we do this today? It's like, you're good at that. I want to do something that's going to challenge you and obviously attack your weaknesses, right? And I think that's the biggest thing is looking at the body as a whole, and then understanding that any type of compensation in your body, whether it's posture, strength, and mobility, is going to further create a weakness or a compensation that could potentially lead to an injury. So I'm a very big proponent of periodization in changing programs pretty regularly. Like some of the high level athletes, I might only have them on a program for 3 weeks because they adapt so quick to it. Especially as if we go through training blocks. For example, when the MLB guys are here full time, they're here 5 days a week and they're here for about 3 to 4 months. So in the beginning, when they first come after the season, it's more general body, like a little body weight, and then introducing them back into weight, because after 162 game season, their bodies are destroyed. And they're destroyed mentally too. They just want to just turn it off. So we start slowly, and the first phase always lasts about a month, and then as we progress, by the time I'm toward the end, I've had athletes and I've had to change their program in like 2 weeks because they're adapting so fast, because they're becoming so fit and so strong and powerful. So periodization is a big part of my programming. And I think it's like you said, pointed out, it's good for a mental too, right? So mentally, they don't want to be stuck doing the same things. And there's real no progress with, continuing to do the same thing all the time in the gym. And whether it's changing your frequency, your rep ranges, your rest periods, there's a lot of different ways to kind of manipulate that. And, if you do like a certain movement and you want to keep that in your program, maybe change the tempo, right? Maybe change the reps. And I mean, that would like mentally too be great, as well as, it's going to challenge you in a different way. Maybe instead of just letting the bar come down, you're doing like a 4-second eccentric. And the change that happens there is tremendous. And yeah, again, just kind of, I'm really big proponent on changing up programs pretty regularly.
I like that. I think that really resonated with me, what you just
Yeah.
said. Even because you get the familiarity, like if I
Hmm.
want to do, I'm just keeping simple stuff, battle ropes.
Yeah.
But then you just say, hey, let's double the tempo, or
Yep.
let's cut the time in half, or maybe even just sprinkle something in between. I don't know. I mean, could you do battle ropes, but then maybe after a minute, put them down and then just do burpees and then go back to
Yeah.
battle ropes?
Exactly. Just constantly challenging and changing things creates a lot of positive change in the body.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually
Yeah.
good. So, just to make sure I've got it right, I think I get it, but I've never heard of the word before. And I think there's something there that I want to explore. When you use the word periodization, how do you define that?
So I basically, to simplify it, just define it as using training blocks. And basically, if you have one training block that is the like focus of, you have a split. Maybe you have upper day, upper, lower, and you have specific movements within those blocks. The body has an ability to adapt to things so quickly. So changing it every 3 to 4 weeks is kind of the physiological kind of guidelines that you want to follow, as the body will adapt in that time. Especially as someone's a new, let's say you're just getting into exercise, right? At first, the body's going to get shocked. And that's when new, I guess, exercise goers experience the most change, right? As soon as you start to see great progress. And then all of a sudden, you start to plateau because the body, again, is getting used to what you're doing. So the periodization kind of just means to change things up regularly, right? You're going through periods, right? You have this block of strength, maybe then the next block is still strength, but you got to change the movements up, still with the goal of just creating strength, or maybe you want a little toning too. But it's all about just constantly changing the movements, the frequency, the rep ranges. And periodization, just in short, just kind of just means just different blocks and different times, and just changing things up on a consistent basis.
Love it. And what I thought might be interesting to explore is, when you've got these MLB guys, are they all on the same team, or are they different teams when they come to your sessions?
Different teams.
Interesting. So I think what's interesting to me is, obviously athletes, it's all about being competitive, right? I mean, I know you go with an athlete to Top Golf and everyone could say it's all about cheese quesadillas and beer, but it really isn't. I mean, you take like a sip of your beer, you try to look like a man, you take a sip of your beer, but like, I don't want to throw off my game, like I want to win. So I could imagine, or would imagine, that these guys are competitive, especially, well, I don't even know if I'd say between teams or within teams. Do you
Yeah.
notice a lot of competitiveness, kind of like that one wandering eye where it's like, hey, Stan over there, just did this exercise. Well, I want to do that exercise to see if I can beat him.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you find a lot of that competitiveness coming out in some of the workouts?
Yes and no. So a lot of the my sessions are just one on one.
Oh, okay.
So, but again, like we spoke about, it's very specific to, that's because it's very specific to the individual. Are there generic movements that I have athletes doing? Yes. I think creating power and strength come from, certain specific movements that I'll have everyone do. But then as we get deeper into the session or deeper into the training, and I start to understand the person a little more, I understand what they need, and I basically implement movements that are specific to them. So, but yes, I definitely get the question sometimes, oh, what does so-and-so do on this? If, they're doing that. And yeah, I actually train a group of like downhill mountain bike kids that race in the World Cup mountain bike series. And they're pretty competitive, and they're a little younger. So they're more in like not, I would say general fitness, but the movements that they're doing are a little bit more basic, I would say. So they're all kind of on the same program. They'll go off and do their own things, but when they're all doing the same stuff, it's definitely, I'm going to do 5 pounds more than this guy. And then they start talking crap to each other. So it definitely becomes competitive, and it's funny to watch too sometimes. Yeah.
So if you're doing so I want to shift gears to like business, because I love talking business, but
Of course.
so when it comes to scalability, obviously when you're working one-on-one, and this is actually what I have been working on for probably the last like 2 weeks, big time every day,
Yeah.
is the scalability piece where obviously I have my one-on-one clients I talk to exclusively, but I can only handle so many. I mean, I limit it now. I moved it from 6 to 7. Now it's at 8. I can handle 8, but after that, it gets to be. I think that's the limit. I think that's where I can still do a great job, but then I start to lose it. Obviously, with you, you can handle more than that. How do you scale? Like, because I looked at your website. You have a great website, by the way. That was one of the things that I love it, because I always go on mobile, and it's like that's like the test you better pass, because I'm like, all right, if you got a real business, I want to see a clean mobile,
that's funny.
Friendly design.
That's something we worked on.
Yeah, yours, I could tell that there was a lot of thought and effort that went into that.
Yeah, thank you.
How do you scale?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and it's something that I've been, starting to think more about, because I do a lot of consulting as well. So I work with other brands and teams, and I do a little bit employee wellness as well at a couple of different organizations. And I think the scaling is gonna, obviously the start of it was the app, and we have a mobile fitness app, m1strong.com. And that's a great way for me to work with individuals on a one-on-one basis. But obviously there's only so many hours in a day and certain time slots where I just can't get anybody in here. It's just not possible. So I think that was the first step in me scaling, was creating the app so I can work with more people. And the app is great. And we have 2 programs. One is general fitness, someone just getting into exercise or just trying to stay fit. And that's a little bit more of a hands-off program. And then the sports performance is definitely more hands-on, where you have the ability to communicate with me directly via FaceTime. You can message me on the app, and I extend my personal number to you so we can go through things if you're struggling, and maybe walk you through exercises if you're having a hard time. And I think the second step is going to be hiring someone and just training them to, I guess, follow the methodologies that I have, I guess you would say, what the brand represents. And I think I'm getting pretty close to that. And it's something I have been thinking about pretty recently. It's funny that you brought that up. And yeah, I think that's the next step. And because like you said, there's only so many hours in the day, and I can only be at so many places in one time. So I think that's the next step. And I'm actually excited to take that step.
Yeah, it's wild. And I don't know if you've explored this, but I'll share something that I reactivated 2 days ago, and is kind of like a next level that I've been exploring and I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on this. I've been exploring the VR space, and I know I'm a little anti-Zuck. He actually banned me from Instagram. I don't even know how I have my Instagram accounts. He banned me for reposting a MotoGP Stoppie video twice. and apparently I was supposed to do that. So then I get a message that first I was warned, then I was banned, and then I contacted them and go, "You're actually banned for life." Oh,
What?
I'm banned for life from Instagram. No, never thought I'd say that, but
Interesting.
we're still on, so we're
Yeah,
hanging by a
cool.
thread. But what was interesting is, you know, I'm kind of have been playing around with the metaverse and using VR technology in different ways. And one of the ways that I have been using it, just started testing it not too long ago with athletes who I want to help manage their fight, flight, or freeze response. And so I've actually been virtually boxing um, my athletes. And
Interesting.
while doing that, I can hear them and I can guide them as we're trying to punch each other in the face. And it feels very real. So it does
No
activate
way.
the fight or flight. But what I can do is I can kind of walk them through, check on their breathing, check on their focus, maintain composure. And it's been very effective. My one athlete in particular, I wish I recorded our first fight.
Yeah,
This person is a true athlete too. They're in shape and
yeah.
they've done some pretty amazing things. But I'll tell you, their fight or flight was activated and they were huffing and puffing because
Really?
they felt like they were under attack. Yeah. And it was very, very interesting to me. And then as we started to walk through, it was only like 2, 3 sessions. We started to find that they were able to manage that stress response a lot better. So and even myself, there's an app called Supernatural, which I've been using to work on my breathing and work on my fitness. And
Hmm.
also, I fight. So I fight in the morning, and then
Okay.
I do this other app just to mix it up because I've been going to the gym and just want
Yeah,
to try something different. Have you
absolutely.
explored VR? Do people in your industry talk about it, or is it a little bit too
Um,
foo-foo and too distant in the future, and people just want you know Joe with a good looking Joe with the slick back hair and the beautiful facility? I mean, are they coming? What do you think in the future?
I mean, I guess that the future is open to really anything, right? And I have not explored that world. I obviously understand that it's becoming a big part of society, and it could be something that who knows. I might say would never use, but never say never. You don't know what's going to be of in 10 years, and um, yeah, I mean, I mean, I would definitely understand how it's creating that flight or fight response. You're in the moment, and how that is very good to manage and understand how to manage your stress levels. So I could see that being a really effective tool. Um, I could probably get more of the younger generation of athletes that I work with to use it. The old guys, not the old guys, but the older veterans of some of the sports I work with would probably never do it. I would just get a look, and um, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm open, I'm open minded to things, and if I mean you're seeing results from something and it works for you, who's to
Yeah,
say not to do it, right? And everyone's got their niche, everyone's got something that makes them, who they are, and I think again, if it works for you, stick to it and use it as a tool, and understanding that there's a lot of tools out there, and yeah, I would be open to understanding more about it for
mhm.
sure.
Yeah, and I like how even when we kicked things off earlier, how you said that you're open-minded, and it's interesting because the better you get at something, I totally agree with you. Like the more you become open-minded, and the more that you're super comfortable saying, like, I don't know. Like
Yeah,
if someone said, "Hey, what muscle is this?" and you're like, the
yeah,
muscle beneath that, like, come on,
yeah,
like I know I can look it up, but like I don't know the exact name of it.
exactly.
Because sometimes it's like, you know, do I really even need to know that? But it's interesting that I do feel that when you're younger, you're compelled to have the answers to everything. But as you start to become a master of your craft or approach mastery, you do start to become more open-minded and you do feel much more comfortable saying, I don't know. Have you kind of found
Yeah,
that too? Like it's almost like a very freeing, in a weird way, it's almost like confidence building and it's almost a sense of security of saying, I don't know.
yeah.
At
No,
least
I
that's how I
couldn't
feel.
agree more. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's when you're a little younger, you don't want to say that you don't know something, right? It's
Yeah.
you just get out of school and you're supposed to have a master's degree in this specific field, but I've almost said, and I've said this before, that I've learned so much just in the real world situation of what I do. I think education gives you a great understanding, it gives you a great base of knowledge, but until you're in a room with someone high level and working with them specifically, um, you're not challenged that way, right? And um, as you progress through this, you just start to want to understand more. And then every time I want to understand something more, it just opens up a whole Pandora's box of me diving into something. And you can do that with everything in this world, and there's always new technologies, new theories, new findings, and it's really endless. And I guess you can almost drive yourself crazy in that way, but I think it's just honing in on certain things for a little bit and not overloading, because I mean, you can easily overload with trying to understand, especially the human body. And there's so many parts of the human body that are not known of the true functionality of it. So it's one of those things that I definitely try to manage, I guess I would say. But yeah, it's definitely something that now I'm more than okay with saying I have no idea, like, and I'm okay with it, And like you said, I think like it is a little bit of like a freeing, just confident, like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know,
yeah,
but I'm gonna
yeah,
figure it out or find someone to help me figure it
100%,
out. Yeah, no, it's
100%, yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
So you must get this question all the time, and I wonder what because obviously not everyone listening to this today is a supreme athlete. Some of us
yeah,
are in the phase of, hey, I love how people say beach body, but everybody's a beach body. But
sure,
people want to lose weight, people
yeah,
want to be fit. What's kind of like outside of the realm of like pro athletes and elite
hmm
athletes? What's kind of because you must get this question because there's much more of a bigger demographic of people that just want to shed 20 pounds. What's usually your best generic advice for just overall people wanting to like lose weight? I'm curious
yeah.
because I feel like I've been bumping into a lot of things that are kind of like anti cardio. And I wonder, is that clickbait or is there some reality to that?
Well, I think the biggest advice I would ever say is, and I'm sure you've heard this, is just consistency, right? And it's very easy to be inconsistent, and it's very easy to use a lot of, I don't want to use them excuses, because there's life. You got work, you got kids, but there's 24 hours in a day, right? And you can get a 30-minute workout in, even if it's 20 minutes. And I think going back to more what you were just saying about cardio versus strength training, I think, it's very preference based, obviously. From a mental perspective, you might enjoy cardio a little more. And if you do, make it your thing. There's a lot of different modalities, right? You can go running, you can go mountain biking, cycling, all those. And then if you're a strength training person, or you like, lifting weights, again, a lot of different modalities, high intensity training, strength training. You can even do like, the CrossFit-ish type of workout, whatever you enjoy. But if there's consistency in that program, you will see results, and that doesn't mean you have to work out every day. And that doesn't mean every workout has to be life or death, the hardest workout, you're crawling out of the gym of your life, right? I think that's another big mistake with training as well, is people think that, oh, that was easy, they didn't get anything out of it. But again, going back to that mental type of perspective, is sometimes it takes a lot to mentally get into a workout. And if you're going to just go to that failure, it doesn't have to be failure every time, right? You pick a day that's more low intensity, but maybe the duration's longer. And then the high intensity days, it's a little shorter duration, right? So there's a lot of different strategies, but I think keeping it simple, being consistent, and finding something you like will create results.
Yeah, I love it. And so I test drove something. I want to share this with you because I think you'll find it interesting. Is wanted to start working out in the morning. I tend to work out like right around lunchtime. That's kind of like my workout every day is usually like one ish.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to keep that, but I want to do a hit workout and I want to
Okay.
do it early, and I want to
Yep.
do it before I message all my morning clients. So I picked the time of 7 a.m. And so
Okay.
what I did is I decided, I said, you know what, I'm going to have fun with this. This is going to be more of an experiment in
Hmm.
human behavior than it is so much me having some sort of result or outcome. So I said, what I'm going to do, and this worked like gold, is I said, I'm going to do like a slow play on creating the habit of a morning hit workout. And so morning number one, and it was interesting because I did put a governor on myself. I said, morning number one, you're going to have your workout outfit laid out and it's going to be sitting in a very predominant place. And so I went out on my kitchen table. There's my workout stuff. And I'm pretty disciplined, so I can go to the workout, but I wasn't disciplined with my morning stuff. So I see
Gotcha.
the workout thing. I look at it. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, you don't have to work out. Don't worry about it. I'm like, all right. So first day I didn't work out, but what I did is I said, I have to at 7 o'clock, no matter what I'm doing, at 7 o'clock, no matter what, even if I'm puking my brains out and I'm sick and I've got who knows, whatever the next strain of whatever is. I said, I have to at least stop for a moment and consider the fact that a workout is an option. And
Absolutely.
so I start with the workout outfit. Then that became put on the workout outfit. I really dramatized this. And then so that's day one. The day two is putting it on. Day three is going down with a workout outfit on and turning on the TV because I was gonna do like a YouTube like hit workout, like just scroll through and grab
Yeah.
something. So I put the light on, and then I try to throttle myself back, and I said, "You can't work out until day 4." And what was interesting is I didn't realize that I was truly creating this habit where like I was looking at the clock at like 6. I usually wake up at like 4:30. So
Hmm.
by like 6:30, 6:45, I'm like really paying attention to the clock on my computer. And I'm like, oh wow, it's 6:45. It's 6:52. Like, and I started getting distracted to the point where my body was almost becoming my mind. And it was like, you know what? Maybe I'm just gonna go put the outfit on a little earlier because I'm thinking about it. Why not just put it on? And then you know what? I'm gonna turn the light on in the gym. Why not? I'm gonna turn the YouTube on. And you know what? I might as well just scroll. I'm already dressed. I already have the TV. I already have the light on. I might as well at this point just do something. And then what I started finding myself doing is I just started working out and I didn't even really have to think about it. And it only took like 4 times of doing this. So I don't know,
Hmm.
just random thought, but
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that people find it so difficult to start something. But I just know that most of my job as a mental performance coach is breaking the habit of being yourself. So it's just a habitual pattern 95% of your day. So I'm
Yep.
like, why not just create a new pattern, but start off
Exactly.
simple? But I think to
Hmm.
your point, like people think it's like, hey man, Joe, tell you what, I haven't worked out for 2 years. Put me on a program. I'll show up tomorrow. Let's do like an hour. Like just
Yeah.
give it to me. Like I want results. And then it's like, whoa, whoa,
Exactly.
whoa. You can't do that. That's just not
No.
sustainable. Like that's ego
Nope.
based. That's not going to hold true. I mean, have you found people trying to come in a little too hot and then burning
Oh yeah.
out?
Oh yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is people get excited about it, right? And they're like, oh, all right, I need to lose. And maybe they're in like a time crunch too, right? They got a wedding or they're going on vacation or they're like, I need to lose 20 pounds. It's like, all right, like, it's just think about how long it took you to put that on, right? It's not going to come off in 2 weeks. You just got to be consistent. You got to come in slow. And most of the times you see people come in and they do this crazy workout their first day back and I don't know how long and they're destroyed. And they're like, that's so discouraging. I feel like it's like, and that sets them up. I don't want to say for failure, but they're like, well, and I hear this all the time. Well, I can't do this exercise because it makes me too sore or it hurts my back, or it's probably because you overdid it the last time you worked out. So it's, I promise you, this is not supposed to hurt the way you're describing to me. So, yeah, there's hard times where you're going to be pushing through some stuff, but, yeah, just come in, maybe do 30 minutes your first workout, especially if you haven't worked out in like, a couple months, it's not going to feel good if you work out for an hour and a half. You're going to be really, really sore. So, yeah, just easing back into it. And then like you said, and you brought up a great point, is that habit. And once it becomes a habit, it's just, It's just automated. It's just automated as making a coffee in the morning and leaving the house, right? It just becomes a part of your daily routine. And that is a hard point. That it is hard to get to that point, but once you're there, it's just it's a lifestyle, and it's a healthy lifestyle, right? Exercise is good for you, and once you create the habit, it's easy from there on out. I feel like
Yeah, and like you said, like just as hard it is to create the habit, it's also that hard to break it. And so
hundred
if you
percent.
get to that point, I mean, I know with me, I'm at the point where if I do my 1 o'clock workout, I'm not even thinking about it. It's just like at 12 o'clock, I'm like, oh, it's 12. And I'm like almost unconsciously, automatically starting
Absolutely.
to shift my focus, starting
Mm-hmm.
to plan like, hey, let's start getting out of here. Let's do our thing. And then when we come
Hundred
back,
percent.
we'll eat. So yeah, it's really interesting. You just gave me $1 million business idea too. Um, it's an emergency 2 week, probably 2 to 4, well, 2 to 4 week. You could pick your program, depends on how much you want to suffer, but it's an emergency workout wedding prep program. So so I picture it like this. So you have your little program where the woman goes in to get fit for her dress and
Okay.
it's a shit show. Like things are
Okay.
not going well.
She's
Total
not fitting into
meltdown.
it.
Total meltdown. Yeah, and she is like, I have to fit into this dress. Call Joe. Call Joe. Can't fit,
uh,
can't fit into the dress? Call Joe. And then at that point, she's an emergency situation. She's already dropped 30 grand on a wedding. So your price point, so that's the anchor. So now all of a sudden it's like
okay.
I've spent 2,000 on this, 8,000 on this, 10,000 on this. Hey, tell you what, if you don't get in the dress, it's all for nothing. Hey, for
That's the
1,200 bucks,
motivation.
yeah, for 1,200 bucks, I will work with you virtually for 4 weeks and we'll get you in the
Yeah.
dress. And if you only got 2 weeks and you put yourself in that situation, it's only 2 grand. So we'll get you there, and I don't know what
Yeah,
you
I
got to
like
do
it.
to get, but I mean, if MMA fighter, I mean, fighters lose that much amount of weight, even though it's
Oh
not
yeah.
healthy. I get it. I know it's not
Yeah.
healthy. Sure,
Yeah.
whatever. But I don't think a woman who can't fit in her dress for a big wedding day that dropped 30 grand on, or who knows, maybe 250 grand on. I don't think she really cares about health at that moment, you know?
No, it's happening. She's making it happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you gave her a sharp knife, that'd probably be she'd probably consider it, you know? It's like,
Yeah.
I'll literally trim the fat, it's like that's like a big pain point for people. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
So yeah, if anyone's listening, just give me, I don't know, 2%.
What we call? What's it called again?
We're gonna
Don't
call
fit.
it,
Don't fit. It can't fit. Call Joe.
yeah, can't fit, call Joe.
Won't fit. Call Joe.
Won't fit, wedding dress won't fit, wedding, I don't know. I
Yeah,
thought I had
we'll
it.
think of that one. You did
Yeah,
have it. I
well,
forget what it was though.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it would work. Yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
how all that works. But so as we wrap things up, would love to hear who is your ideal client. If someone's listening right now and they're like, "Hey, I like this guy Joe.
Yep.
Uh, I've got a wedding coming up." Let's just say that you are an athlete or someone that wants to get
Yeah.
fit. Who's your ideal client? Like who's listening right now that should call you and say, "Hey, I like your style. Let's do this."
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think it's someone again who has that dedication to the program and wants to be consistent. And again, if they're looking just to be healthy or general fitness or sports performance, they just they come with that want and willingness to learn. And because I will say that probably a lot of what I do is not traditional. I have traditional movements and I guess you would say exercise order and program design. I think I'm traditional in that way, but a lot of stuff that I do is, and the thinking that I do is a little different, and I guess come open-minded and willing to trust the process, and again, and I'm here for everybody, right? I want everyone to be healthy, to perform for their job if they're a professional athlete, and just if you train better, you live better, and that's kind of our little saying that we have at Emily Strong, and I think that goes a long way, and just having that mentality that you know if you're looking to gain something, it might not happen overnight, right? And tangible, immediate rewards are not always present. So it's just having that grit and that perseverance, and it all aids in changing everything that you do, like your self-image, your self-efficacy. It's all for the better picture, for you being healthier and living a better life. So that's kind of like, I guess you would say, our ideal client and what we're looking for in people, and just really just trying to help everyone out there.
No, I love it. And where can people reach out to find you if they want to join one of your programs?
So the best way to join one of our programs is on our website. It's m1strong.com. And then my Instagram, you can reach out. It's at Joe_Cancellieri. And yeah, those are the two best ways to reach out. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them for sure.
All right, Joe, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for fielding some of my crazy off the wall, non-typical questions. I really appreciate it. And
No,
thank you so much.
I appreciate having me on. I hope we can do it again soon.